Welcome back to another episode of the Heatio Home Energy Show, and I'm joined again by the MD of CB Heating, Clayton Browne. Thank you very much again. We talked last time in the last episode a lot around your journey into the industry and the foundations that you've set, and how that's going to certainly scale up now under the watchful eye of EDF. But I'd really like to start getting into these installer challenges and how we can start to, or is it going to be a case of installers being encouraged into this industry, or do you start to see some signs in the boiler market that is essentially going to make that a lot less an attractive option for installers, and they're going to be looking for something else? And
yeah, well, it's a great conversation actually, because I don't feel that anybody is talking about this, because everyone's just saying there's not enough installers
in heat pumps.
In heat pumps, but in general, I mean, it's 130,000 gas safe installers, so there's an awful lot of them out there that are fitting boilers every day. So there's a lot of skill there. There's a lot of guys everywhere that are doing the same job every day. So what we found, certainly with the installers, is the boiler market, the prices for a boiler install are, the amount of margin that an installer can make on a boiler install is reducing.
Okay.
So we've seen things like Boxt, the Boxt model, where a customer can go online, buy a boiler from £2,500 supplied and fitted, and they pay the installer between £300 and £500 for that job. So you see a lot of the installers that are suffering because of that, because there's just the demand is going online, and Boxt is buying power, and other companies out there also doing the same thing, but the margin is getting a lot smaller. So historically, that's where installers made their money, was on gas boiler installs. So we did ourselves, to be honest. We made good money on swapping a gas boiler out over the years, but the margin was on average probably £2,000 that you would make. Now we're drastically seeing that reduce. Certainly locally in our area, we're seeing one-man band installers offering gas boiler replacements from £1,500, £2,000.
Yeah, as low as that.
Yeah, because there's so many of them. They're all fighting for the work.
And are we talking, just to put it into context, that type of installation, is that kind of box off the wall, box back on?
Yeah, I think that's probably the best scenario to look at. Just a combi replacement, for example. But the prices aren't what they were. And installers, they're looking at it and they're thinking, I can earn loads of money with gas boilers. Well, I don't know many that do anymore, realistically. You've also got the fact that not many installers fit a gas boiler a day. Most individual installers might do 2 or 3 a month maybe, because it's only part of their work. Even if they're doing 2 a week, they might be making $1,500, $2,000 a week from that kind of.
Really?
Yeah. So that's what we're seeing, because there's so many individual gas installers that they're all fighting for the work.
I know. I suppose there might be some people out there that hear, earning £1,500, £2,000 a week, take home, if you like. It sounds quite good, but you're talking about off that, you've got all your, you've got vans, you've got petrol, you've got tools, you've got materials and everything. So there is
absolutely. So when you take all that away, these guys aren't earning what they used to be able to earn on gas boilers specifically, because you've got the likes of the online companies that are doing it for much, much cheaper than what they are. So they're losing an awful lot of work to these companies.
And that never used to be the case, did it? Because there was always a rhetoric that went around. I never got into doing my apprenticeship when I went straight into heat pumps, so I never touched fossil fuel. But there was always this kind of rhetoric where the big name in the industry for boiler installations when I was growing up was British Gas.
Yeah.
But they never really challenged the local installer because the prices were so much higher.
Absolutely right. And that it was actually a benefit to go to a customer if they'd had a British Gas quote. Because you know it'd be $5,000, $6,000, $8,000. There, we all saw some crazy numbers, but there was good margins there because that customer, even if you went in £1,000 lower, still felt like they'd actually made a saving. Yeah. So gas installers earn good money there. Mm-hmm. And that's where the exposure. You can learn lots of money being a plumber, changing boilers, because it was good. It was a good area to be in.
It's a very strange environment, isn't it? Because I assumed there was still, for British Gas to warrant doing that and not change their way, there was sufficient enough customers that were buying those boilers because of the name and the security that gave them. But as an outcome of that, the cost of the boilers, the typical cost of boilers to the average consumer was inflated, which created this margin for installers to step in.
And now, talking about this model and how it's changed over the time. Now, if you have a look at a British Gas quote, they're much more in line with everyone else.
And that, I'm guessing, they've had to come down because all of a sudden you've got the likes of Boxt coming in and
absolutely. So and they can offer things that the installers can't. Things like 0% finance and all of these other elements that, and all the service packages that the small installer can't. So there's so many elements where installers are being pinched right now, or they're concerned about their future, because you're seeing it in the gas boiler world. You're also seeing it in the heat pump world with the likes of Octopus that have got a great deal, but they can't compete.
Yeah,
so we're talking about why there's no installers. They are there. It's just they're nervous about how to get involved and why, because the gas boiler prices will be increasing. With the market mechanism that's coming in next year, I believe. We're still waiting on the details for that, but the cost of boilers will be going up.
And there is something with the boiler manufacturers, isn't there? They've, for every 10 boilers they sell from next year, they have to.
The Clean Homes market mechanism. It's so that manufacturers have to offset the cost of a boiler with a heat pump. So whatever the metrics of that are, it means that there's a lot of pressure on all boiler manufacturers to be able to sell more heat pumps.
Well, it kind of, if they're saying essentially 1 in 10 boilers that you sell has to be a heat pump, there or thereabouts, isn't it? For every 10 boilers you sell, you have to sell 1 heat pump. Then, and we know on average 1.7 million boilers are installed every year in the UK. So they're saying from next year there will be 170,000 heat pumps installed, which is a long way from where we are
Absolutely.
now.
And it's going to be difficult for the manufacturers, 100%, because they're being pushed into this into producing much more heat pumps than they've ever done before, certainly for most of the manufacturers. But the installers, which we're talking about, aren't aware that these boilers are going up, because the price that is coming off of a heat pump is going onto a boiler. So where we're talking about these prices, which are in comparison with a gas boiler, these have all come down, but the boilers are going up. And this is what we're going to see over the next few years. And then they're not going to be buying boilers; they're going to be buying heat pumps.
Yeah. And customers are going to be asking for it, because there will be backlash, no doubt, when this starts to come in, because obviously there is a cost of living crisis in the UK, there is an energy crisis in the UK, and I said it would take any government, it would be very difficult to start making these changes now, where they're going to need to start, making electricity cheaper and gas more expensive. When that happens, that's going to cause a revolt, no doubt. But that in the boiler mechanism there, that's kind of going to be doing that, isn't it? There is a grant here that means that you can get a heat pump installed right now for the same or similar cost to having a boiler installed. Yeah. You fast forward, say 12 months, and you're going to be in a position where you can now get a heat pump installed far cheaper than you can get a boiler installed.
Yeah, and that's where we're heading.
Yeah, and that's going to hit people, because customers are going to go, yeah, but I don't want a heat pump, I want a boiler. Yeah. And at the moment, it feels like the carrot is there. Here's the £7,500 grant. You can upgrade all your heating system in your home. You might not want to, but here's an opportunity to do it. But as this stick starts to come out, which is increasing those prices, increasing gas prices, all those things that are going to start to hit those people that are refusing to make this change, to a solution that is similar performs perfectly well, will give them energy security, just because they don't want to change.
Yeah.
This is going to hurt those people in the future.
Because everything's about choice. A consumer must always be able to choose. And that's important. And, that's why we were talking earlier about high temperature heat pumps. It's the same kind of thing. It's probably not the right thing in every situation, but it is, again, it's controversial, but it enables the customer to have a choice and to have option. And I think when they're comparing it to a gas boiler, I think we're going to see, again, over a very short amount of time, we're going to see some real change because the fines for the manufacturers are huge. Yeah. We're not talking hundreds, we're talking thousands of pounds per heat pump that they miss off their target.
Well, so it's getting to the point from, we've seen some of it going around, and we've seen some conversations from the boiler manufacturers quite kind of concerned around all this, because it's like a carbon credit of kinds, isn't it? You don't necessarily have had to sold that boiler, but you've got to essentially pay that. So you don't have to have sold that heat pump, but you could be Worcester Bosch, for instance, and you haven't hit your quota, so you could pay X amount to Samsung to release X amount of heat pumps into the market, maybe free of charge or at a lower cost. So it's going to be a really, really interesting time to see how that all comes together. But you touched on there briefly what's being referred to in the industry as high temperature heat pumps. And when we talk about 1.7 million boilers going in every year into the UK, these boilers are producing temperatures of 70, 80 degrees into people's heating systems, and people are used to that. Now, the reality is not every heating system needs that kind of temperature, it's just that's what people are used to. But actually, if you said comfort in your home, sufficient enough domestic hot water, I mean, you don't need domestic hot water coming out at 70, 80 degrees. You wouldn't have your hand under that for very long. So we've got this kind of new breed of heat pumps coming into the UK. We're certainly seeing more of them now, as it seems to be getting closer and closer to this point where we need to be attacking that boiler breakdown replacement market. And one of the misconceptions that I've seen with these high temperature heat pumps, and they're all doing them, we've had the Panasonic unit on test, we've had the Viessmann unit on test, we've had the Samsung high temperature super quiet unit, but they've actually got an actual fully fledged high temperature unit coming out any moment now. Daikin are doing high temp, I think Ideal. They're all bringing these units out now and getting them accredited in the UK.
And the Octopus one as well.
Yes, of course. Yeah, probably the most famous one now after the presentation the other week. And that's been built on the back of the Red product, the Red heat pump, which is a phenomenal piece of kit, extremely expensive, but they seem to have made it into this unit. But just for like clarity for anybody watching it, because I've seen a lot of people talking negatively about high temperature heat pumps. These heat pumps have the capability to deliver higher temperatures, but that's not to say that you couldn't run a high temperature heat pump at a lower temperature.
That's correct. And again, there's lots of different models, lots of different ranges. And, we fit a lot of the Daikin Altherma HHT. Yeah. And we love it, to be honest. It's a really great piece of kit. The installers like it. It still has a COP of over 3 in the minus temperatures with flow rates of over 60 degrees. So it's still an efficient unit. Yes, it's not as efficient as a low temperature system where you can get your scops into the 4s and 5s and 6s. So it's an option. But what we find with the high temperature unit is it's a great boiler replacement. Mm-hmm. So again, back to, the distressed purchases, or if you've got a quirky property, something that's a little bit unusual, something where you've got no idea what size the pipes are under the floors. You've got customers perhaps that have just put all new designer rads in their house and they don't want K3s all over every wall in their house. So it enables, again, an option, a choice. Microbore, things like that. There's so many factors, but it's nice to have a product that can deliver something if the customer wants it. Now, we'd always advise to go for the most efficient option, but it's customer choice. Yeah. And that's why I think high temps are always quite controversial, because why are you doing that? Fit a low temp. Well, if we can't fit a low temp or the customer doesn't want one, then they have to be able to have a choice, and that's why we do a large number of those.
And it's changing a lot of the metrics as well, because I mean I do think sometimes when we've looked at heat pump installations, and maybe the message that's out there in the world is you need to have a super efficient home, you need to replace all your radiators to have a heat pump installed, and that I'm sure has been the case for time gone by, where there was various reasons why that was the route to go down. But I mean, they were expensive installations. You were having to, there was a lot of inconvenience in the property. There was a lot of upgrades required. But as you say, if you've got the will to do that, if you're happy to absorb that inconvenience, and fundamentally you've got the funds to do it, then absolutely, everybody should advocate for those low temperature systems. But that should have been advocated for boiler installations for time gone by as well. So the improving the fabric of your building and doing all those things, it to me is representative of both. Just because the technology can do it doesn't mean that it wouldn't be beneficial to run it at lower temperatures and improve your efficiency of your system and your home. But then there is, and I think because of the renewable heat incentive and the way that incentive was structured from a funding perspective, you got more money the more efficient your system was. So naturally, people were incentivized to go for lower systems. If you had that capital to invest anyway, let's upgrade everything. We now transition to this new boiler upgrade scheme, and we've got people that don't necessarily have the option to go for this, but don't necessarily want the inconvenience of the house being ripped apart with radiator upgrades and everything else that comes with it, and are potentially in a distressed purchase situation. They need something faster, and a high temp unit going into that environment on its own and in isolation is a solution. And as you say, it could maybe get a cop of say 3 even in the winter times. I mean, we've been monitoring some systems since last year, and we're getting about 3.3, 3.4. But one of the key parts, and I think this gets missed in the conversation around putting a high temperature system in as a replacement to a boiler in a distressed purchase situation, is that is not where the journey ends. If you're working with that customer, you've gone in, you've done heat loss calculations to the property, roughly which rooms are going to perform and how they're going to perform. The next logical step is when budgets become available or time becomes available, upgrade that next radiator in the system, start to reduce that flow temperature over time.
Yeah.
And that's achieving the same goal for the customers, because to me that budget point is huge, and it tends to get missed a little bit in some of the heat pump conversations. Is this is the system, this is the low temperature system, this is how it should be done. And if you can't afford it, I'm sorry, you're not allowed in the club.
Yeah, there's a lot of installers that still do that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that say, no, it's only the only thing you can buy from me is the most efficient system that is on the market. Mm-hmm. And okay, if that works for them and for their business, no problem.
Yeah,
because that customer will just go somewhere else and, as with anything, will buy what they need or want from wherever they'll get it from. But for us, we need to be able to provide customers with a choice. And that's choice and education as well, because it's a case of, well, these are the reasons why, this is what you'll get with both, these are the costs, what would you like?
Yeah.
Because then it's all, we've done our bit by actually advising the customer that might not be the most efficient way of doing it, but they choose to go down that road.
And I think to have that in your armory, because when you look at, I mean, if this was a car dealership, you've got the ability to sell somebody a Rolls Royce, and then you've got the ability to sell somebody actually, we're not even talking bottom end. You're talking a kind of a Volvo. It's a good installation. It's a quality installation. It's going to do the job. You're not selling somebody something that you think is going to break down in 3 months' time. We're talking about somebody either being able to, if you want the Rolls Royce or the Bentley of installations, it comes at a cost, but it's also achievable. But you can also buy one that is going to see you right for the next 10, 15 years. You're not going to be paying through your nose in terms of to buy the kit. The running costs are going to be acceptable, no different to that, maybe even slightly better than a boiler. And you're getting this added benefit of over time, there's things you can do. You can You can benefit from off-peak electricity tariffs. You can benefit from utilizing stored solar energy. And I think, to me, how this ties into this wider conversation about installers transitioning is, if you are an installer that's coming from a combi boiler replacement world, and you're in that realm of take boiler off, put new boiler on, take boiler off, take new boiler on, to go from that to the Bentley level of installation might be a little bit daunting. Not to mention, you're dealing with new technologies and things like that. Yeah. But if you're starting to create safeguards in the industry or in the technology by saying, I haven't got to necessarily get my heat loss calculations down to the 0.1 of being correct. With having a high temperature system, there's a few things I've got a bit more wiggle room in the installation. It might take some of the fear out of it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, again, we also have consumers doing the same thing. If we've got a house with existing underfloor heating, for example, and they've just moved into the property, it's the underfloor heating's been in for 10 years. They've got no idea what the spacings are. Mm-hmm. They've got no idea what the insulation levels are. All of these things have to be factored in, because if you fit a low temperature system and you're not confident in your emitters, you're only lining yourself up for pain. So again, that's where, we've had some customers choose a high temp with things like underfloor heating, just because they don't have the confidence to choose a low temp, because they can't turn it up. Yeah. That little bit hotter. So,
that's an interesting one. Actually, the customer choosing, because we actually had a guy, and he was, he was on a journey. He'd had the solar done, he'd had the battery storage, and he was on a journey towards having to doing all this stuff. And his wife was very much concerned about this journey. And the heat pump one was a particular part, because he was, I want 35 degrees in this system. I want the lowest temperature. And his fear was that between, at the moment, his wife will go and put a hand on the radiator and feel how hot it is. And he was like, if we put this in and she feels that radiator, she's going to think this thing's not working. It doesn't matter how warm it is in the house. So he wanted it going in. So we designed the system for 35, but he made a point when we commissioned it to set it to run at 65 degrees. He said, just leave it run for 65 degrees, and I'm just going to turn it down a degree each week to...
they're all the people in our lives we don't want to upset as our wives, that's for sure.
Exactly. But it makes, but that is a transition in somebody's mindset as well. If you're used to, you walk into your house and your house is warm, it hits temperature because you throttle that boiler and you fire that heat into the system. Yeah. I think sometimes we look at this in the kind of heat pump purist view. We look at this sometimes and say, we're taking, we've got to rectify 30 or 40 years worth of boiler or boiler
skill.
Industries. Yeah,
it's skill. It's the I think the skill level for installers has diminished over the last certainly the last decade, especially when combis just took over the world. So a lot of installers only fit combis or have only ever fitted combis, and that's a scary thought, really, because certainly at apprentice level, you learn all the different systems, how, who, why, and a lot of them probably not visited that for an awful long time. So we spoke about multiple things of barriers for installers to get involved in heat pumps, and these are only recurring things, aren't they? Yeah. You've got the costs from the gas boilers that are reducing. They're seeing their margins come down. There's still a lot of gas installers out there earning great money, and good luck to you. But most of them, certainly the ones I speak to and in our network, are seeing their margins being squashed all the time, because there's so many other gas boiler installers in their area that they're fighting for the work. So,
well, as they've got easier, I suppose then, if you're coming to, you mentioned, there was the people out there in the heyday of boilers that no doubt started to build a lifestyle based on that income, and we'll have had houses based on that income and holidays based on that income. If you're now new coming into the industry and the norm is, a few £100 an installation and you make ends meet and you go on, that becomes a challenge, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, because you can so sympathise with them. I mean, again, some of your other guests have sympathised with small installers, and so do we. We want them to be able to continue to earn good money. And we give them the opportunity to do that and take away all the reasons why they shouldn't. But, there's 4 routes for an installer to get involved in heat pumps. One is to get a job with Octopus or another MCS business. The other is to become MCS registered themselves, which obviously takes a lot of time, cost, all the paperwork, all the office-based, all those other restrictions of why people don't get involved in MCS is still the same. There's changes happening with MCS. I mean, they're all good people there at MCS, but it's still not quick. It's not easy. There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of reasons why they wouldn't. So that's option 2. Option 3 is if they're out there on their own and they want to install a heat pump system, they can pay an umbrella scheme to do the MCS elements of that install for them, their design, the paperwork, and gives them access to the grant. Now, that can be anything from £500 to £1,500 for that installer to pay for that service. So when you've then got that installer that's comparing an installation with us or with Octopus, for example, that installer is probably £3,000-4,000 more than what they can get the same thing from the energy companies.
Yeah.
So that installer is at a loss at the beginning already.
Yeah.
So that's the third route. And then the fourth route is hpin. So hpin, it's so open to an installer to come in without any ties, no cost, free training, free support, free work. They can bring work to us as well. They get paid £500 for every job that they bring to us as well, and they get the job. So if they do one job a week, from £2,500 to £5,000 a week, that's more money than they can earn fitting gas boilers.
Well, I suppose that there's as you say, if you said to somebody, go on and change your employer and join an MCS accredited, that's a potentially quite a tough decision to make, or certainly a decision that you'd want to take some consideration over. But if you're out there and you're a self-employed heating engineer that is perfectly happy fitting boilers, but even if you're just here, and this isn't scaremongering, this is saying boiler prices are going up, your margin is coming down. If you don't see that, and it's not visible in your day-to-day, feel free to crack on, but that's coming. So if that is the case, and under CB Heating with your heat pump installer network, so I could go onto your website today, I could issue an inquiry, you'd send me some online training first.
Yep.
And then I'd have a physical training session in a training centre.
Yep.
And I get that free of charge.
Free of charge.
And then just on the off chance, I go to a customer's house that I've been servicing their boiler for years, the boiler breaks down and that customer says to me, you know what, I've been thinking about one of these heat pumps. And I say, to be honest, I don't recommend it, I don't do it. And that customer says, you know what, I definitely want one. Appreciate you don't want to do it, but I'll find somebody that does. If they've gone on that training and they've done that they've got that ticket in with you at no cost, they could go, instead of saying no, they could say yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a
yes.
no-brainer.
It is a no-brainer, but for me personally, like I said to you, for me, it's about the installers. I have to do the best I can for these installers to show them that it's not as scary as it looks. But right now, if there's a combi boiler that's broken or a heat-only boiler that's broken, that gas engineer goes to that property. I guarantee you there is no talk of a heat pump. If there is, it's in a negative light. Mm-hmm. If the customer asks about a heat pump, you don't want one of them.
They don't work. They're too expensive. Yeah, and it's for any, because I mean, this is the home energy show, so this is aimed at people living in homes as well. So those customers who are watching this, we're saying the likelihood is when that installer says they don't work, they're too expensive, I wouldn't touch it.
Yeah.
Underlying that is the fact that they're not accredited and they're not trained us to do them.
And they're probably just a bit scared.
Yeah,
it's the unknown. And they hear from all the myths and misconceptions that have happened, certainly from the boiler manufacturers over the years, that hydrogen's going to be the answer. And guess what? Nobody's really talking about hydrogen anymore because it's been a bit more accepted. Yeah. So, again, these installers are trying to find out their route, and that's their 4 options. It's get a job, do MCS yourself, use an umbrella scheme, but it's going to cost you more money, or get involved in hpin, and then you get the job and you'll earn more money from the job than doing it yourself.
Yeah, and you
without having to, have all the cash flow elements, all the design, all the hassle, all the time.
But that's a great opportunity. I mean, if you put yourself in the installer's shoes in those positions, and the different types of installers that you've got there, you're going to have organizations, businesses that are out there with multiple heating engineers employed by them that are currently fitting boilers, and then you've got Octopus Energy running huge recruitment campaigns, paying very well to encourage installers to transition over, and Octopus Energy aren't going to. So if you're employed by a boiler organization, you could go and do this. If you are the owner of that boiler company or you're self-employed, then you're not asking them to, completely change all your company branding, drop anything that's got blue in it, we're going green, everything's... You're saying, come along to some online training and do the in-person training course, and just have a look.
Yeah, free. Have a go. Yeah. See how you find it.
And for those organisations that say maybe, and I don't know whether this is scuppering the business plan, but is that you could, in theory, come along, do that at low risk, at no risk, and if you then decide, you know what, this is for me, you can then take the next step and go and get your own accreditation.
Because that's another installer we've got over from gas onto heat pumps. And for me, that's what this is all about.
And I think for anybody watching this, they're probably looking at Clayton Browne and CB Heating saying, so this guy, he's obviously, a businessman that's come straight out of Oxford, and he's seen an opportunity in this industry. You started off doing what they were doing. You're a heating engineer by trade.
Yep.
So what a fantastic story to say. You are not standing there in a pinstripe suit telling these people that there's a business opportunity here. Because we've had plenty of people contact us, and I'm sure most heat pump installers have had the same. We've had organisations that have got access to the energy company obligation funding. And I know you've got the funding direct yourself as well, but we've had outfits that are sales outfits, and they've come along and gone, we need a quote off you for installing heat pumps under this scheme, and you're gone, well, it's a little bit more to it than that. We need to know the job, we need to know some information about it. And the figures they're talking about, because they're taking the margin because they've managed to get onto that funding. But you're coming at this from the installer's perspective. You're creating an environment where the installer is not going to be pushed to the wall on how much they can charge these installations.
No, and we've even got I think we've got nearly 20 MCS registered installers on hpin that fit for us because it's easier than doing it themselves. Now, how cool is that?
I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, our mine and Tom's first business before Heatio it was called Easy MCS. We helped installers transition from fossil fuels into that. I mean, that business was purely created on the basis that the journey to gain MCS accreditation and all the paperwork and everything, it is an administrative burden. It is a painful process on occasion. It can be a costly process as well from an administration perspective. So the fact that you're taking that on and taking that away from the installer, because I always said that my dream would be there would be never any need for Easy MCS back then, because it should never have been that hard. All the systems and the support should have been better to help people do it. You're giving them people that. You're creating this umbrella and this safety net for people to work in.
And it's free. It's free. There's no cost, because what we really want to enable, again, Jim spoke about it on your last show. These installers can't compete. No, they can't compete. So if you can't compete, get involved with hpin, and you can install in your local area and earn more money than you could do if you sold it yourself. It's such a revolving, everybody benefits type of model, and that's, I think, really why it's been so successful. But we're aiming for 1,000 installers in 2024. So considering they say there's 4,000, I'm sure there's more than that now, but 4,000 heat pump installers in the country, and if there's 1,000 of them that are hpin members, a quarter of all heat pump installers being on our network, for me, that's incredible.
It is incredible. And the other thing is, you've got coverage. You've got installers around the country, so the inquiry can come in. It can be shipped out. I mean, I can't have you on the show without talking about one of the. So we've spent the last couple of years developing a proposition called Energy as a Service, and that actually it gets released into the UK market January to March of next year. And all the consumer research that we've done around this proposition is that it's gonna fly. It's all around essentially taking away any upfront capital cost to the customer. They essentially have this system upgraded and installed at no upfront cost, and then they pay a monthly service fee, a little bit more than what you'd pay for a boiler rental. For a service and maintenance contract on a boiler. You pay a monthly service rental to have this system, and it's the heat pump, the solar, the battery. So you walk into a house that's got nothing, and you transition them in one fell swoop, and then they get the benefits from lower running costs of energy bills, and they pay a fee each month for us to basically look after and maintain that system for them. And they start to become part of this virtual power plant network. Every home that has energy as a service ultimately feeds into the virtual power plant. So when we start to broker deals with either the energy networks, the energy suppliers, the consumer directly benefits from those deals. And I have to admit, like when we started fleshing this concept out, and it was just as much about dealing with consumers and understanding what they liked and disliked about the proposition, dealing with energy suppliers on how we can deliver kind of optimized tariffs into the market and make sure that we, when customers make that switch, that there is a tariff that's going to benefit from it. And if the weird thing was, gaining consumers' insight and understanding was easy. Engaging with the energy suppliers like E.ON and Octopus on the innovative tariffs that would support this was easy. And then I looked and thought, how the hell are we going to fit these systems? With with the level of interest that we've received during the discovery phase and the level of interest that's involved, I physically don't. Something like this is needed. Because I don't know where those inquiries would go. Where is the workforce that can physically go and do to the volumes that are out there that want this? Yeah,
because as we know, heat pumps are not easy. It's complicated. It's difficult. The whole start to the finish journey is not simple. So we take on all that pain. We use our experience, our people, our systems, our processes to strip all that away to make sure that an installer can only do what they do best. And that's the actual installing itself. So that's the benefit to us, and that's why it's free. And that's why, we want to work with more installers, because we're selling so many heat pumps that we need our installers. We need them just as much as they need us.
Yeah.
And again, it's about respect. We respect installers. I was an installer. Like you were saying about Oxford, I actually was kicked out of school at 15. I honestly, I had a problem with authority apparently. So,
that's the reason why you work for yourself. Yeah?
Maybe. So it's about drive and determination, as well. And with these options, it gives people choice.
Yeah,
and that's what makes this different.
Yeah, I think you're creating a safe environment for people to get involved in. And I always thought that when I looked at the MCS journey at the start, that there was a lot of restrictions in terms of the routes that you could get in. But I always remember looking at it. I think when I went through MCS right back at the start of my career, it must have cost me nearly £6,000 at that time.
Yeah,
and that was with it's including kind of time off for training, cost of training, implementing the quality management system, certification fees, consumer codes, everything.
All the qualifications that you need. If you're out of date, you have to update all of those. Yeah, it's
a lot.
It is a lot.
And what are we not now? I mean, I would imagine. It's got to be around maybe £1,500 to gain MCS now, maybe 1,500, 2,000.
I really don't know now. I can imagine it's still thousands. And I think the difference as well for installers is installers are used to going on a 3-day course, getting a certificate and going, hey,
I'm good to go.
I'm competent, I'm good to go. MCS, they have no idea of what that is.
Yeah.
So again, they I'll just go get it myself. Well, if that's what you want to do, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah,
and if that fits you and your business, absolutely fine. But those 4 options are there for any installer.
Well, there's when you look at the MCS standards and the regulations, and you say that the knowledge you can gain from going on the course and all that kind of stuff is great, but yourself, the first standard that you read is quality management system. You're talking up to the levels of kind of ISO 9001, and I don't know how many installers are wandering around with a non-conformity log in their vans of this non-conforming product and what I did for corrective and preventative actions. It doesn't happen in that
25
world.
other policies of every other type that they'll never see or use until the next MCS inspection.
Yeah, so you need to have it there in the fold, and it needs to be audited on every. It's crazy, and reality is that there's probably an argument to say some of that infrastructure was created. Not necessarily to keep those installers out, but to enable organisations like yourself to say, look, we can do all this because we can do it very well. And that customer, when that heat pump breaks down in the middle of on this day, and that installer's on holiday, they can still phone you. There's a route for them to still get support. You're not reliant on that just that local installer. That installer actually is joining a community, a network of people.
And we only want the best people as well. We're so lucky to have such a great network of good, genuine people. The culture is fun. They have a laugh, we have a laugh. We share information. They put pictures on our Facebook groups. If this is what I did today, do you like it? And look at this tricky bit. There's a community.
That's genuinely a community.
A genuine community of support, and everybody's positive. If we have any negative people, they're off.
Yeah, get them out.
Thanks very much. Bye. If the standards aren't good enough, we advise them and we try and coach them to say, look, that's not acceptable. You need to do better. You need to change that. And then we'll watch them the next time. If they don't improve, they're off.
Yeah.
We only want the best people. So for every 5 people that join hpin, 2, maybe 3 of them are actually removed.
Yeah.
So again, we only want the best.
So the opportunity's there. The door is open.
It is wide open.
Yeah. And I say that this is what a great thing to be able to offer. And I would implore every single heating engineer watching this, go and register. There is no, you're not wasting your time. There's no harm in it. And even if you are there's something coming down the line that in the next year or two that means that investment of a bit of time into CB heating was worth it. It's a no-brainer. It feels like a no-brainer.
That's it. We put our arm around you. We help you find the answers of what a heat pump is, what it means for you. And we've got great relationship with Dakin and Ideal as well, which are also supporting us with the training elements, so that you don't have to travel hundreds of miles to access training. It's all there. We've created bespoke journeys for you all. We just want you to make that step and get involved.
Let's get on board. Thank you very much, Clayton.
No problem.
Really pleasure
Thanks
having
for
you.
having me.
And thanks for watching, everyone.